Welcome to the Be Better broadcast, where we bring you tips and strategies and techniques to help you to live a better life, to help you earn more money, to help you in your relationships, to help you in the world of fitness. You know that we love to talk about sales and really anything that will help you to live an extraordinary life and achieve self-mastery on this show. And you know that we love to bring you interesting guests in each of these different areas of life and business to help you to take those next steps. And today we have a very interesting guest for many different reasons. He's just a joy to talk to. He's a friend that I met last month from a few different mutual friends. And Mr. Andrew Deutch is the expert that we're going to be talking to. And he's been in the world of sales and marketing and consulting for many years. He is the CEO of Fangled Group. And for those who don't know Andrew, he is the founder of Fangled Group, and he is a strategy-first, multilingual global marketing and sales consultant who has successfully driven business growth in more than 100 countries. You heard that right, 100 countries, driving revenue in the tens of billions of dollars. You heard that right, too, tens of billions of dollars. He's also the host of the Fangled Cast podcast, where incredible guests take deep dives into relevant topics for the business world. Andrew has studied both international trade and psychology, building his unique methodology focused on converting everyone a company touches into brand advocates as a strategic base for sustainable growth, which we're going to be talking about. Andrew's traveled the world extensively, including a 10-year stint living and working in Brazil, and visiting over 120 other countries where his training led to his unique skill set and his bold and innovative methods. But I love his humor, and he's also an incredible guy to talk to. So, Andrew, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me on. That guy in the bio sounds like someone I've met before.
He sounds like a very interesting guy who I'm really excited to dive into his experience because, Andrew, we have a lot of salespeople in the audience. We've got some solopreneurs. We've got a few consultants. So much of what you talk about is going to be very relevant for this group, right? When it comes to brand advocates, but even more importantly, when it comes to your own story and your own experience, right? So you've done much, you've accomplished much, you've been many places. Have you really been to over 100 countries like yourself?
Hey, I don't really keep score, but years ago I had an assistant who wanted to know and came in my office and slammed the door and had a list from the United Nations, and we went through the list one by one. For me, it was kind of annoying. For her, it was exciting. At that time, it was, I think, 121.
Wow.
And I'm not sure. I think there's been a few since.
That is, I mean, you're very well traveled. I'm excited to talk about what that looked like. But let me ask you this, what led to this world of strategy and consulting for you?
I've always had an interest in business. I came from a family with a grandfather he has that Depression era story. 5 cents a day, working part-time, and ended up owning one of the largest commercial printing companies in the country at one point in time. If I remember the stories right. Wow. I think we had an adhesive. We made labels for the car industry as part of the product. 85% or something like that of all car batteries made in the United States had our label on it. So, wow. It was that rags to riches story, and it always inspired me. And I've always had this knack for just seeing opportunities where other people don't see them, and love the opportunity to take something from nowhere to somewhere.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate with that. Let me ask you, I'm always just curious to know, if I had known you in high school, right? Were you this same guy with these ambitions? You wanted a lot from your life. You wanted to see all these places. Like, who were you in high school?
I was two different people. Freshman year, I was an idiot who drank and smoked and ended up in summer school. Watched my friends go off to rehab and straighten myself out, and then graduated and went off to college and did very well. So I sort of benefited from the adversity of others and recognizing that wasn't who I wanted to be.
Wow.
It was an interesting time. So even my entire circle of friends transformed from those folks to different people. My direction, if you'd asked me as a freshman in high school, what are you going to do? I don't know. I'll probably work in the factory with the printing factory or something. I had no ambition to go to college or otherwise. Although I had these entrepreneurial desires, I was also kind of lazy and uninterested. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then watching all these other people almost destroy their lives, it makes me sound like a real winner, doesn't it? I took the lead from that and said, you know what, I'm not going to do that, and started to actually study, got good grades, new interests, and then went to college, and from there just kept growing who I was, and finding more and more things that I was interested in doing.
Yeah, no, it's incredible that you were able to be aware of, what you didn't want to be. And I think that does make you a winner, because at that point, I feel like we all see, what we want, what we don't want to be. We see it in the people we hang around. But at that point, it's ultimately a choice to say, I'm going to stay here, or I'm going to make a change, and I'm going to go down a different path. And it
Yep.
sounds like you chose the different path, and that's led us to where we are today. This wouldn't even
Yep.
be happening if you didn't make that specific choice, right?
Yep.
So when it comes to sales and marketing, would you say that your grandfather was one of your biggest inspirations in terms of that, or did you have other influences on you when you were going into that field?
Initially he was, and then through my career, I've gotten great inspiration both from brilliant entrepreneurial business people, and also from some just horrible bosses I've had over the years that taught me how not to be. I think you learn, actually, in many cases, I learned more about how to be a true professional from horrible experiences than I did from some of the inspirational people in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. You can take lessons away from everyone.
Yeah,
Now, did you go to school for sales and marketing?
I did. My undergrad was in international business administration. I knew I wanted to be in the global market. I had been an exchange student during my last year of high school, or between junior senior year. Got the itch to wander the world. I'd always looked at maps of the world and wondered what was there, what were those people like, how did they think.
Wow.
So I studied that, and then graduated to realize that with a bachelor's in international trade, in a horrible economy at the time, there were no jobs. So I ended up taking a position with a nonprofit, working in their program, and also as a fundraiser. So going from that, I picked up this incredible skill of selling goodwill, selling value. Because what do you do in the nonprofit industry? You sell a product that results in someone giving you money, and what they get in return is a good feeling, a certificate, and a handshake. And talk about selling something that people desire, in terms of product, your car salesman, your whatever. This was where you cut your teeth in learning how to sell.
Yeah.
Many refer to it as selling nothing. I don't think you're selling nothing. You're selling somebody a true value rather than a product. So from that, I have a different perspective on sales than the features of what something is. I sell the benefit, and that became the strategic foundation of everything I did going forward. The problem was MBAs. Every MBA I knew back at that time were unemployed. You'd apply for a job, and there'd be 30 guys that haven't worked for a long time. And I needed a different resume. So I went back to school, and I studied in a form of psychology, and really focused on multicultural marketing, and the concepts and psychology behind these things that I was learning. So when I graduated, I actually worked in private practice for a period of time while I was building my business clientele. I worked in crisis centers. I worked as a therapist, and
Wow.
and did all of this, and it really rounded out and gave me a true belief of not looking at the demographic, but looking at the values of people, and what are the true motivators, and what is that path of purchase that people go through, and how do you leverage that to sell what it is that you're doing, not just domestically, but on a global basis, and how do those cultural differences matter?
That's so. I saw what you wrote about psychology, but I didn't know that you were actually in crisis centers. I didn't know you were a therapist. Very interesting. So you go from this world of sales and marketing to learning more about psychology, going back to school for that, diving into that world. How did those insights in psychology and being a therapist for that time and being in the crisis center, how has that helped you when it comes to what you do in business?
It's incredible how important the ability to communicate with anyone is, and how important it is to have people feel that you're actually listening, and you care about what they're saying, and communicating with them, and getting to talk about themselves in the purchasing process. I mean, you think about, something as simple as, I don't know, maybe going to the car dealership, and the guy says to you, "What car are you interested in?" Now, a guy who knows how to communicate says, hey, what do you really like about the car you have today? What can you learn from that response? If I could find you something that had those, is this also of interest? How do you feel when you get behind the wheel and you hit the gas pedal and it pushes you back in the seat? Is that something that you value, or are you more a person that when you get in the car and you close the door, you want to feel safe and secure, and that if something were to happen, you'll be okay? There's all of those value portions of the vehicle, the color, the engine size. There is a market that's super important, but it's the minority of it. But if you can learn how to meet people at their model of the world and join them there to then bring them where they need to be, you become that incredible salesperson.
Very interesting. So there's a lot of different directions we could go here. I love how you focus more on, like you said earlier, the value of what that product or service is going to do for somebody versus just the features of, what kind of car do you want? What color do you want it to be? How fast do you want it to go? What's horsepower? Instead, you ask those powerful questions in order to determine their model.
Mm-hmm.
What else as salespeople, and when you train sales teams and everything that you do, what else can we do in order to better interpret that person's model of their world other than asking specific questions like that?
Well, there's a lot of societal research that has to go in. People who know me know how absolutely annoyed I am with the current survey culture in America. We make surveys not to figure out and understand our customers better. We use them to control our employees. We use them to limit how much we pay people. There's all of these ulterior motives behind these surveys. And a survey only tells you what people who fill out surveys are willing to tell you, not your market. So a survey basically tells you what mood was that person in on the day they filled it out. Mm-hmm. And it tells you that's a customer who likes to do surveys. Either it's someone who's furious or someone who loves you, rarely someone in the middle. So we do a lot of this qualitative research for our clients to really understand the inner workings of the people who are in that market. What do they truly value? And based on who they are and their values, how do we communicate with them so that they feel like we're speaking to them personally? And when you can get to that point, I mean, like for example, here in the US, we have certain products that are purchased in a very specific way. There are features that matter to Americans. Imagine something that you would use in your kitchen. Most Americans cook their own food, or someone in their family does, and there's a certain way that we use products in the kitchen space. Now, if you go to a country where labor is extremely cheap, those same values don't matter, because the person who's working in the kitchen is an employee. Mm-hmm. You might have a maid or a nanny or someone who's using your kitchen. So a pan that you would buy for your house for the high end, for its appearance, its feel, its look, and otherwise, maybe in that country, you're looking for durability. You're looking for some other value within that material. So it's all about truly understanding your audience. Who is the buyer? Who are the decision makers along that path? And today, more so than ever in the industrial space, it's become extremely important. If you don't do that, you are not a salesperson. You're an order taker, which is fine. That's a great profession, and there's lots of businesses where they're going to call and you're going to take the order and they know what they want. Good order takers start to become salespeople so they can suggest other products and expand the business you do with those people.
Yes, everyone literally rewind that 2 minutes and re-listen to that again, because that is super powerful. I had an individual that I was talking to recently, and it's a similar example to where I'm more of this, bubbly, outgoing, loud talking person, fast talking. And I had an individual I was working with the other day, and he was just very soft-spoken, very slow talking, right? And I was having a hard time connecting with him. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? And I'm trying to go at him with my model of reality, the way that I see things, the way that I operate. Mm-hmm. And I had to do something different because it just wasn't working. So I simply adjusted how I spoke with him, and I got quiet with him, and I started to speak a little bit slower. I started to look away when he looked away, things such as that. And it's, a different example, but similar in the fact that I had to really get on this individual's level in order to best help him. I could have given him what he wanted, right? I could have just took his order, like you said, but I really tried instead to relate to him and get to know him. And that's the thing about you that fascinates me, is the fact that you've seen a lot of different cultures and you've been immersed in a lot of different cultures. Like me, I've only ever lived in the United States. You went to Brazil and lived there for 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
very incredible. So my first question, just out of curiosity, is why Brazil, and what made you stay there for 10 years? Or how did you decide to stay there for 10 years?
It's I'll give you the short version since these shows. So I had been doing a ton of work in Central and South America with different projects, and was referred to a group down in Brazil to go do a 90-day project. I won't go into the details of the project, but at the time that I was there, if you go back into the history of Brazil, they had been under a dictatorship for a number of years. Then they had President Collor, who was impeached. But during his time, they had finally opened the market for imports. Prior to that, there were almost no imported products in the Brazilian market, which meant there was no competition, which meant in a non-capitalist closed society, if you wanted dishes, there were maybe two different kinds of dishes you could have for your house. If you wanted a car, the cars didn't have to be better because they had no competition. So I'm there working on this 90-day project. And during that time, I was realizing in the US, I was a young guy who kind of knew how to do stuff in the global market. In Brazil, I was an expert. Why? Because I happened to know more than people who had never had any experience. So I was getting these offers and opportunities to work on projects that normally a guy with my history wouldn't have had the level of experience that I would have been attractive. But two things. I knew a little bit more than they did, and I happened to be there. In the interim, while I was working on projects, I met who's now my wife of many years, and we decided to remain rather than come back to the States. Decided to move my offices and stay permanently in Brazil, and I grew my business there for 10 years.
What would you say was the biggest difference of those you served in Brazil versus those that you work and serve with in the United States?
There is a very different sort of code of ethics, morality, and otherwise related to the business world. You have a much more complicated tax structure and a lot of bureaucracy that we don't deal with in the U.S. Although you can listen to people here complain, send them down to Brazil for a month and just ask them to figure out how the import taxes work, and they'll be really glad they live here. And so it's also there's a very different here in the US. Imagine you're working for me, Brandon. I ask you to do a detailed report on something, and you bring it to me, and there's a part of it that I think is kind of weak. I would say, hey, Brandon, can you punch this up and bring it back in? We'd be fine. With most of the Brazilian employees, if I did that, they would quit or get angry because I didn't tell them all the great things that they did first. And I've had lots of experience. Some Brazilians who might be listening to this might get a little offended by it, but it's true. Many times I made that mistake. So it's, you really need to let people know first where they were doing the right thing. And by the way, to make this thing perfect, let's improve this part. So the direct way that Americans communicate doesn't work there. And there's other just little social things that are different. Here, if you walked up to somebody who's overweight and put your hand on their belly and pat it on it and go, boy, you must be earning good money, you'd get your hand broken. In Brazil, it's just kind of the way the sort of friendliness between people, and it would be normal.
Interesting.
So you have to get used to those cultural mores to really understand who you're dealing with.
Yeah, and especially in this virtual world where we could be having a conversation with someone in the US 1 minute, and then the next hour you're talking to someone from Brazil. I was speaking with someone from Chile the other day, and it was just a very kind individual, but there's definitely differences when it comes to the cultural norms. And it's interesting that what works here won't work there, but what works there in some ways will work here. Like when you give that project back to somebody to make some changes, it's always a good thing to say, hey, by the way, you did this amazingly well. You did this well. The only change I'd like to see is this, this, and this, right? That's going to make that person feel better anyway. So things that you learn there will work here very well. Yep.
I've had meetings here where I've done that. And the person goes, you know what, stop blowing smoke. Tell me what I need to do to get this.
It's true.
Again, it goes down to the individual. It's not, these aren't, I always joke that I love stereotypes because they're such a good shortcut. But the reality is to generalize these things over an entire culture is nonsense.
That's a great point.
Yeah, but there are certain directions and certain things that you learn over time that do matter.
You were talking to me when we first had our conversation, because I was talking about the CEO series and I was asking you about your story, and you were telling me there was a time where you were traveling like between time zones constantly. You were
Oh
just
yeah.
you were getting things done. And there was a time where you actually decided to move from being an owner to being an employee. And a lot of people might hear that and they'd say, oh, to go from being an owner to being an employee, it's compromising, especially with this whole fad of, if you're not working for yourself, then you're building someone else's dream, right? And I believe that it makes sense to work for other people if you're a certain kind of person or if you have certain types of goals. So how did you make that decision to move from owner to employee? And what did that time of your life look like for you?
Yeah, well, this goes back. I came back from Brazil in 03. In 07, we had a thriving practice. We were doing great, and the economy started to slide. And I was at a decision point. We were completing projects that we were working on. New projects on the horizon didn't seem to be there because people were withdrawing. They were bringing in during an economic crisis. And I had to decide, do I want to weather the storm and take on small projects that weren't as lucrative, or take an offer from a client of mine who I had been working with to do something exciting, which was to completely take over and restructure the international division of their company. So really, I took on a major leadership role within the company and shelved my business to do it for economic reasons, and also because the challenge looked like fun. It looked like something that we could do. So they were at that time, it's many years ago, so the data is probably not completely accurate, but I think they were doing between 12 and $13 million in, I think it was 12 or 13 countries. And within 5 years of this intense travel and otherwise, we took them to, I think it was 14.2 million in sales in 75 countries.
Wow.
Which is a huge badge of honor and a great accomplishment for the team that I built within the organization. I was able to experiment with hybrid sales models in different countries. I was able to develop, excuse me, a repair and service mechanism and equipment sales in different countries. I was able to hire reps in the larger volume regions and really build a business within a business. So it was an exciting time. The problem was I was traveling. I was in 40 something countries every year, 300,000 air miles, and my health I couldn't do it anymore. By the time I quit that job, I weighed about 365 pounds.
Wow.
So I could barely even walk up the darn ramp to get on the planes anymore. And I decided I did it. I achieved. Now it's time to get my health back and get back to what I do.
And in terms of your health, how did that improve during that 7-year stint of what you did with this company?
Well, it didn't improve. It was.
That's when your health.
Yeah, my health went from all the travel. When I quit, I was 365, and then I moved into something else and dropped the weight and got my sanity back. I still don't really have an internal clock that works properly, but
is that true?
Oh yeah.
After all that travel, it still has its toll on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been years since I did that. Everyone I get made fun of because I'm usually up around 4 in.the morning. I could go to sleep anytime during the day and get my 8 hours. 2 in the afternoon, 8 at night, it doesn't matter.
Wow.
So yeah, I physically am 90% back to what I was before, and I lost the weight and I'm healthy again. And
good for you.
If I was asked, would you do it again with what I know now? Yes, but I'd do it differently.
What's the one thing you would do differently?
I would have done a lot more virtual meetings rather than insisting on the face-to-face.
Yeah.
There were times where my presence was absolutely needed when I would have to walk factory floors and visually and see what's there. But there were other times where I traveled that could have been avoided, and I could have been on a lot less intense travel schedule and still been able to accomplish what I did.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Just curiously asking based on that answer, how has this virtual landscape caused you to, like, what positively has changed for you because of this virtual landscape with the work that you do with all the businesses you serve and help?
I've developed significantly better methods of being able to visually connect and communicate with people online to avoid the need to constantly be on the road. I mean, when you think about, the one thing that we can't get more of is time. It's, there's only so many hours in the day. And if you're not one of those people who's willing, and you shouldn't be one of those people willing to work 14, 15, 16-hour days. If you're a traveling salesperson and you're spending days and nights on airplanes and otherwise, that's productive time that you've got to figure out how to make up.
Yeah.
So if I'm able to visit 7 countries right here in this window and accomplish what I need, so that I maybe I do the face-to-face once every 2 or 3 years as opposed to twice a year. I've developed you can see the background, and I can do all sorts of different effects and things that allow me to give presentations and be more personal and connect with people. And the reason that I've done it is to reduce the amount of time I'm wasting behind the windshield or sitting in an airplane. When I can do it in a current project, we just set up an office in Angola, Africa.
Wow.
Now I could get on a plane and go to Angola and train them. I speak the language. They speak Portuguese. I speak Portuguese the same as I speak English. But why would I? I need to train an entire team. We're going to set it up in this virtual space. We'll translate the items. I'll speak their language. If I didn't have the ability to speak the language of the country, I would do a translator with me to be able to have those meetings. The technology's there to save us from all of that wasted travel time. Not to mention the fact, I'm not really that interested in the time of a pandemic, even though I'm fully vaccinated and feel somewhat safe. If I can avoid sitting in a flying tube for 20 something hours with people I don't know, it's probably a good thing.
Absolutely. And it comes back down to that most valuable asset, which is what you mentioned, is time, right? You get to now take your time and use it to help other people or more people, or spend that time with people that you truly care for in your life. Yeah, that's powerful. Congratulations on opening that new office in Angola, by the way. That's amazing.
Yep, it was a team. Our team did a great job with those guys.
Awesome. You speak a lot about brand advocacy, and like I said, we've got a lot of salespeople, we've got entrepreneurs, and I find that the one thing we don't talk enough about is the idea of building a brand, in the sense of creating loyal fans and raving fans, and creating people who come back to you time and time again, and truly doing right by the people who buy from me the first time so they continue to come back. And we have limited time, obviously, so I'm curious. I've always been interested in the 20% of actions or things that we can take and execute on that create 80% or more of the result. Yeah. So when it comes to brand advocacy, and I know this is a broad question, but what is one action or something that we can do in order to better retain our clients and even turn them into raving fans?
Well, the first part is, and probably the biggest, is to push back on what you just said. I'm not interested in just my customers becoming advocates for my brand. It's every touch that we make in the market should become an advocate, because there are a lot of people out there who may not be able to, or don't need what it is that you do, but can still carry prestige and advocacy for your brand. Think about, luxury brands. How many people do you know that would advocate for how great a Ferrari, a Porsche, one of those kind of vehicles are, and could never own one? So a business has to recognize that every touch that they have in the market, whether it's a customer, a prospect, a vendor, all of those people can become huge advocates. I've talked to guys in sales, and they'll tell you, man, I wish that I could have sold those guys. They didn't want what it was that I had, but man, they're the greatest company. They really know what they're doing. They ask me the right questions. They evaluate it. I would have loved to have sold them, but shoot, someday maybe I could even go work there. That's the kind of brand advocacy that a vendor can have for your company. It's 3M. 3M is a company that I've competed against many, many times in the years in the industrial space. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a buyer with a better product, a better solution, better pricing, everything. And the buyer's response to me was, yeah, but nobody ever lost their job buying from 3M. In other words, I'm not going to take a risk. And then, of course, we respond with the right answer to that, which is, yeah, that's probably true. But how many people made it to the next level in the company by not taking risks? And when the risks are proven to be risks that will make you a hero. So, yeah, you won't be fired, but how about I get you into the next office? How about I help you move up, make you a hero to your boss? But again, that's brand advocacy when you hear things like that. And 3M should be proud that so many buyers, and I've heard it spoken in multiple languages. It's not just in the US.
So what you're saying, based on what you just said, which is really powerful, is it's really the mindset of, even if they're not buying from you, it's being very conscious and aware of the messaging that you're putting out there and the response that you're getting back, even from people who haven't bought from you yet, or who may never buy. But it's even in all the content, like content marketing, it's the same exact idea then.
Yep. I've done in the past where, for example, I've interviewed somebody from a vendor who wants to do work as one of our pool of vendors who provide services to Fangled Group clients. And they know who we are and they know the work that we do. And they want to tie themselves to us because it helps with their brand, that we're an approved Fangled vendor. That's a big deal to some companies. And it's because we respect every person that we come into contact with, whether they can or can't do business, whether they know contacts or they'll never refer anyone to us. It's always everyone from anyone who's at a labor position or unemployed on through to top executives at Fortune 500 companies we've worked with. We want everyone to be an advocate for the Fangled Group, not just people who give us money because we've provided them great service.
I love that. That's a huge perspective shift, and it makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate that advice. One of your most recent ventures, Smart Soda.
Yes.
Let's talk about Smart Soda. For the last few months, I've seen that you've worked with Smart Soda. Is this your brand? Tell us a little bit about this.
It is not mine. It began as a concept for a client. I am embedded. I'm part of the company. Okay. They are. Let's go back for a second. If you're going to launch a product, there's 3 categories of product launches. There's that crap they sell in the middle of the night, where somebody has found a solution to a problem nobody ever will have. But if I baffle you with bullshit, you'll buy it. The next level are products that solve a problem that we're not completely aware exist. So, for example, the iPhone. When the iPhone came out, nobody knew they needed that. But as soon as they saw what it could do, they went, wow, where have you been all my life? And then there's the last category, which is there's a known problem in the market. We all know it exists, with the exception of one weirdo who lives in a villa somewhere. And not only do we know the problem exists, but when we see the solution, we go, finally, that's Smart Soda. And that's why I got involved. I mean, if you look at the beverage market today, to talk about sodas, every year for, I think, the past 14, 18 years, it's declined and waters have increased. Why? Because there's mystery sugars in chemistry. They're highly acidic. You'll see how many YouTube videos of people cleaning rust off of something with soda. The only reason they can clean it off is because it's got a pH below 4 or 3, really acidic. And it's just known not to be good for you. It rots your teeth. There's all of these allegations that there's studies out there that back up. So when you go to the convenience store, people don't go to the fountain because that's where the dangerous, the stuff that they perceive as bad, they go to the coolers. And what do? They buy waters. They buy flavored waters. They buy energy drinks, all of these customized, made for me products, which also, by the way, mostly are highly acidic and not good for you.
Yeah.
So what Smart Soda does is they start with alkaline water. To the other side of the pH scale, alkaline water is better for you in so many ways, and there's tons of studies to back it up. And then they added real ingredients. It's not out of Uncle Billy's chemistry set. It's natural. It's non-GMO. It's kosher. It's all of those things that we look for, and we bring the consumer back to the fountain, and the fountain is where the stores make all their money. It's where the restaurants make all their money. If you buy a can of bullshit energy drink out of the cooler, the store's making a tiny margin, and you're getting 12 ounces of beverage, and you go, and it's expensive. If you were able to get that at the fountain, you'd get 3 times as much for the same money, and the store actually makes more money.
Yeah,
because it's made on site. They don't have to cart it in. There's no recycling necessary for the cans or the bottles that probably end up in the river and not in a recycling bin. You don't have to have an employee load the cooler. There's a whole story behind it. So what they've done is they've created a drink that young people, millennials and younger, who've abandoned the brands that I grew up with, and by the way, don't drink, and created a healthier solution without all the mystery ingredients that you can customize and make your own. You can actually go up to a smart soda machine at a convenience store and pick your flavor, either flavored water or soda, and then you hit the next button and say, I want it to be an energy, and it mixes an energy boost.
Oh, cool.
It has an immunity boost if you want it. We have a variety. We're even coming out with, in places where it will be legal, a CBD boost that you can add to your drink and make it your own. And that's what the consumer wants. So I joined them in helping to grow the business. And it's a team of just really dedicated, brilliant people who've got a true solution to a defined problem that we all know we have. I joked yesterday with someone. He said, what do you mean everybody knows that sodas are unhealthy? I said, well, I know one guy who deep fries kielbasa and eats chips and thinks that because Cheetos are orange, they must be a fruit. Wow. He's the one guy who disagrees with us. Everybody else knows that the other products are not good for our health.
You know, if I went to a store and I saw that fountain and I saw that was an option and I had some knowledge behind it too, which is where the marketing comes in, I would absolutely try that. Like, that sounds like a product that I'm very interested in trying, because I'm the water drinker, right? I don't drink soda. It's poison to me. I see it the same exact way. But that sounds very interesting, and it's awesome how you've been able to take all your experience from all these years and culminate it in a way where now you're able to bring something like this to the market, which will make a positive difference on people's lives, especially soda drinkers.
And do your homework. When you go to look at the waters, notice that the most expensive waters and the premium waters that are out there are alkaline waters, not tap water, because alkalinity is much healthier and you're not adding more acid to your system. There's all sorts of research, and I'm no doctor, so I can't make medical claims. But when you read the research from peer-reviewed studies on the benefit of alkaline beverages for people, you'll stop drinking the cheap waters that are just filtered acidic water. You'll look for the alkalinity.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to respect your time, Andrew. And the final question I have for you is, in this chapter of your life, what is the positive impact that you want to make in the world?
Every day I continue to do what I call the Pick My Brain session, the mentoring programs for other professionals. I've gotten so much from so many great people, and so much from horrible people that taught me how to be good at what I do, that I like to share it and spend a lot of time working with young entrepreneurs and other business people. So, and I also have a lot of creative pursuits where I have nothing to do with business that I really enjoy working on. So that's kind of, I hope that's the answer to your question.
No, and I think it's great that you're taking everything you learned and you're giving back and you're helping other people to make progress in their own professional lives, but also personally as well. So that's a beautiful answer, my friend. I thank you for your time this morning. Thanks for going into all these different topics with us. And I wish you the most success possible with Smart Soda and everything you do in the future.
Great. Thanks so much for having me on. I had a blast.
Thank you. An incredible conversation with Andrew Deutch. We talked about everything from sales to marketing to brand advocacy. One of my biggest takeaways from this was to be conscious of all the touches that you're making in the market, even with people who aren't buying your product, because it doesn't mean that they'll never buy. But even if they do never buy, Andrew made the great example of, Ferrari, Lamborghini, right? You might never own one, but when you see one or when you talk about it with other people, you're generally saying good things about the product, right? So what can you do in your own messaging and your own content marketing in order to be aware and conscious of the different touches and the different impact that you're making with your message? We talked about Andrew's story from high school, who he was then, who he's become, the places that he's seen, and we went deep into sales and all the ventures that he's working on now. Thank you so much again, Andrew. Thank you all for watching as well. And if you found any value in this episode, the only price of admission is to share this show with one person who could use this information. Share it with one person where this value will make a difference in their life. And that's your only price of admission. No sponsors, no ads. We thank you for watching. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.